Hello and welcome back to Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson-Ridley, and today I am joined by Helene Popken, who has been seeking answers to attain optimal health. She gleaned that there was more to optimal health than exercise and diet, and as an entrepreneur, mother, a former Ford model, a wheelchair-bound child, a finalist on MasterChef, writer and ghostwriter for several notable cookbooks, a devoted yoga teacher and practitioner, Helene has distilled key factors that contribute to optimal health mentally, physically, and spiritually into a system that delivers results. She works with clients to reestablish their focus on whole life balance, freedom, and health. And after delivering behavioral change programs and coaching thousands, the unequivocal freedom and longevity experienced by her clients separates her from other coaches. So Helene, I'm very excited to have you here on the show. The two first names threw me there. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here and speaking to all of you who are listening. Thank you.
And so, there's so many things in your bio that we could dig into between like modeling and cookbooks and all the things. But, I love to start any interview I do with just like what's brought you to where you currently are and the work that you're currently doing.
Well, I think it's a journey of yearning, purpose and yearning. There's no mistake that things happen to us in life. And even though, for example, when I was 7 and I was wheelchair bound because they thought I had leukemia, actually, it took them about a year to find out I didn't, and after the bone marrow biopsy, they realized I had a rare bone infection, osteomyelitis, which is not so common in this country. And was treated with intravenous antibiotics for about a year. So I had a catheter, and it was rough. The whole thing, start to finish, took about 3 years. So I was on the couch. I think I know every sitcom jingle from the 80s. This was before we could fast forward commercials, or choose what we wanted to watch. Anyway, so I think that experience definitely shaped me in the sense that life isn't really worth living unless you have your health. It's not worth it. Mm-hmm. And then there were several other incidences that occurred, my skin becoming really bad, Western medicine failing me, and me needing to find the answers to acute and serious health conditions. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice, because everyone thinks being healthy is boring or tastes bad or is somehow like yuck, I don't want to be healthy.
Yeah.
And I was on a mission and still am. How do I have my cake and eat it too? And still have integrity, but in my health, because I know that without your health, life isn't worth living. My mom died early, and I have been on a mission to help as many people as I can find freedom and joy while living a healthy lifestyle.
I love it. And it's so important. And I think it's, the statistics around health in our country are just like atrocious. And for women too, we focus specifically on women in this show, but like 1 in 4 of us are on antidepressants, 1 in 8 have a thyroid problem, heart disease and cancer are still the leading causes of death for women. Like there's so much there. And so it's, when you get to that point where you realize like, hey, my health really matters, and that we have the capability to, do something about it and change the outcome of how we're living, is really powerful and important, I think.
It is. And I think we weren't really taught on how to read the signs, because cancer doesn't just show up one day out of the blue. It's been building over time. Or other diseases, it's unusual that things just kind of pop up, and it's up to us to start to fine-tune our ability to have balance, get enough sleep, stay hydrated, find ways to manage our stress levels, be sure that we're getting detoxified. And I don't mean you go on these radical, master cleanse things. I mean, just doing things where you perspire every day, where you may be taking baths, taking care of yourself, making sure your skin is exfoliated, things like that, like where we can stay on top of it. It's like, it's the prevention model, essentially, because so many of these things can be are preventable, and it is stressful. Now, moms are supposed to be, working, the full-time maid, the full-time chef, now the teacher with homeschooling. I mean, it has gotten so stressful for us. It is a miracle how we're going to make it through this. Marriages are going to make it through this, and just families. It's tough right now.
It is. My son just, at the time of recording this, just went back to school, and I'm like, I have 5 hours a day of quiet. But I know so many of us haven't found that yet, and it's just it's tough for sure. And so, for those that are in that space right now of just like chaos of all the hats they have to wear, how do you suggest, you start with, because I know one of the big things women struggle with is like making the time for ourselves.
Yeah.
So where do you suggest they start in getting back on track with that?
We have to find the time. We have to make the time, like you said.
Yeah.
And it's tough because you're tired, and we all need downtime, and then we also need self-care time, which is actually doing, right? So there's the being and then there's the doing, and we need both actually. And it's really hard for us to get both, because sometimes the being is after the kids go to bed, and then you're watching Netflix, or maybe you're reading a book, or whatever it is you're doing for your being time. And then that kind of eats into your sleep, which then impacts your ability to wake up early to take care of yourself, for example.
Right.
And so it's tricky, and it's a balancing act. And it's really important that we look at our priorities. A lot of women are saying, okay, well, my family should be first, or my work should be first, and then my family. And then they're prioritizing themselves at like position 3 or 4 on the totem pole of
Right.
life. And that is a setup, unfortunately. But it's society doesn't look well upon us when we're prioritizing ourselves. We become selfish, egotistical, maybe even narcissistic, which is unfortunate, because if we don't prioritize ourselves, we can't show up for our kids fully present. We'll have shorter fuses, when we get angry. We won't have the creative ideas when we go to the grocery store to prepare the healthy meals that we need to prepare. It just is this ripple effect. And for me, it's essential. I get grumpy, and I'm not really a great person to be around if I don't get some exercise in, for example. Exercise is huge for me, and that's kind of that's my saving grace. Some people, it might be different, right? They might need their coffee time or their tea time. You know? They might just need that quiet time, and it's about setting boundaries. Not from a mean place, but like, hey, guys, I just need 10 minutes, no interruptions, and also it's a great exercise for the kids too, to know, okay, mommy needs some quiet time, So I think it's number 1, setting boundaries. Number 2, figuring out how you can get to bed early enough and maybe wake up early. I think for me, mornings are precious. And I know for a lot of my clients, mornings tend to be the only time. Like if they don't get it in before the day starts, like it doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's really important to tune in. Alex, we're not really, like I ask people, and even myself, how are you? No idea. I can tell you how my daughter is, I can tell you how my neighbor is, I can tell you how my boyfriend is, my ex-husband, I can tell you how everybody else is, but how am I? And so this me time that I'm suggesting really needs to be a time where we check in. How are you? And gosh, that's a hard question to ask, because we're going to have upset, worries, concerns, financial, emotional, and it's not pleasant to look. But I think it's essential. And this me time, that for me is usually exercise or yoga, something to that effect, has been the most powerful thing.
Absolutely. And I know we were chatting briefly, kind of figuring out where we're going to go today, which is probably going to be in multiple directions. But, you had some thoughts around exercise and how to bring like more intentionality to it. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because I know exercise is like that thing that I think a lot of us strive for, or maybe we don't know exactly what to do, or are worried about it, what it looks like, or it has to look a certain way. Like you don't have to spend 3 hours in the gym. Like you can, there's a lot of ways it can look. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, because I know you had some thoughts.
Well, I think for me, exercise has become the most efficient way to kind of kill a few birds with one stone. I'm a plant-based person, so that's a really poor analogy, but you know what I mean. Like we have to be efficient, we got to like make it happen, and it's got to be like impactful. I don't have 3 hours to spend at the gym. Maybe some of you do, and that's great. That's how you want to enjoy your time. Totally awesome. But the real deal is that when it just becomes like a checklist and it's just checked off the list, there isn't a lot of joy. And I'm really committed to change and impact. I have developed so many different ways to help my clients have long-term results, because I wasn't satisfied when they just got a short-term weight loss goal achieved, or when they were able to clear up their skin within 3 months, or these short-term things just weren't doing it for me. And so the long-term key, the magic ingredient, is really joy. And this I can say now, after almost 30 years of being in this industry and working with people, it's joy. If it's not fun, you're not going to stick to it.
No.
It's gotta be fun. And we forget how to play. I mean, I'm sure your son is like reigniting you in how to play because he's like, Mom, let's play. And so you're like,
Yeah, always.
and it's really fun. And my daughter's 16 now, and her play is a little different than it was when she was younger. But we have forgotten how to play. And I think it's really important when we're tapping into ourselves. How are you? You know, how am I? And to take 3 breaths and to really tune into that. And whatever's in the space is in the space. It could be anxiety. It could be worry. It could be, sadness. It could be any number of things. And it's really important in that moment not to push it away or to get into a blame or a shame conversation around it. It is so important. And to accept that it is there. Because the moment that we resist it, it grows and takes up more space. And the moment we accept it, it starts to dissolve. And that doesn't mean we're hooking into it and we're like going to tell a story about it. But what I'm suggesting is that we accept it and then we take it into our movement practice. That could be a walk around the block with a dog. That could be even doing the laundry. Like, and getting the dishes unloaded, like in the morning, that's kind of like a typical thing we're doing first thing. Right. And, so but it's a mindful practice, but it's highly intentional and extremely honest, like radically honest. Like, I'm worried about how I'm going to, make ends meet this month. I'm worried that my husband might not be in a job at the end of the month. I am concerned because Johnny, is not really focused on his schoolwork and I can't get him off his phone, like whatever. And these are just real things. And they seep into your day. They steal your energy. They create passive aggressiveness. They erode relationships. They drain you. They bring you down. And it's like we've got to start to honor like what is in a space and then move through it, because I believe emotions is just energy in motion. And if we're not moving it, it's just kind of getting stuck. And then we're going to eat the extra, piece of bread to try to like calm down. We're going to reach for the extra sugar snack at 4 o'clock, and it's like all these things are just, I believe, ways in which we're trying to self-medicate or to, manage what's in the space. So if you can, in the morning, check in, get honest, accept and love what is, and then move it, and it looks there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I can share with you how I do it, but this is something that I'm really finding is more effective than any diet, any mindset exercise. And trust me, I've master's, bachelor's in nutrition. I'm like a master coach. I've been in the coaching industry. I train coaches, I mentor coaches. I mean, I coach, young coaches who are starting their businesses, like, I'm all about coaching, but like this practice, this is the secret sauce.
I love it. And, I think what you're talking about is so important, because I know for myself and for a lot of women I work with, like, we want to run away from our emotions. And that's where, we're burying it in food or in maybe pushing too hard in a workout. Like, I've been guilty of that, or just swallowing whatever we need to say instead of getting it out. And that leads to thyroid problems and, hormone issues and all of this stuff. And so I just love that idea of, checking in and being like, here's how I really am today.
Yeah. And then breathing it out. Like if you're in a run or, and just really like intentionally being like, okay, I want this anxiety to leave me, or shake it. If you like to dance or do free movement, you can even just shake it.
I love that.
Yeah. There's all kinds of ways you can actually even envision where is this living in my body. So you kind of depersonalize the story around it. And you go in and you say, okay, where is this living in my body? Maybe it's in my stomach, maybe it's in my jaw. And then you breathe and attach your breath to the intention, and then you breathe it out. So there's, but we just don't want to touch it, like you said. We don't want, it's so uncomfortable, but it's our stuff. We have to.
Yeah. And as long as we don't, we stay stuck and we don't move forward. And there's so much freedom in being able to, grow and to let things go and to, process what did I make this mean and do all of that. So.
Yeah. I mean, my yoga teacher always said, you go to the mind you go to the mind through the mind and you go crazy. You go to the mind through the body, you stay sane.
Mm.
And I think that these thousands of year old practices like qigong, tai chi, yoga, I believe that they are somehow rooted in that presencing process.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay attention if you don't want to fall over in some of the yoga postures. You know, it requires you to be present because it's like, this is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had someone on the show, I think it's episode 51. She was a yoga teacher. And so we actually talked about, yoga as not so much as a physical thing, but as really like connecting to your mind. And I really love that idea. And it's true. Like if you're not, you'll fall over or you'll, crash and burn. Sometimes that, we have to do that to get it. But
crashing and
doing
burning.
these, yeah.
Go ahead. You're doing these things.
Well, I was just saying, doing these things like that pull you, back. I was just thinking as you were talking, like and I haven't done this in years, but I've played violin for, since I was 5. So we're talking like 31 years of playing the violin. And it's been less over the last couple decades, but it was always one of those things that no one had to tell me to practice, because it was one of those things that like recentered me, and I could, stop worrying about all this stuff, and I'd just like get pulled into the music. And by the end of it, I'd be like in a totally different place emotionally.
You just described what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it's movement.
And so tapping into what that is for you.
That's the power. That's so beautiful. Because it's true. It's like you're speaking a different language when you're playing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And you just described exactly what happens in the movement practice for me. It's like it all just dissolves and I feel completely reborn. So it's really fun. And music for me is key.
Yeah.
So there must be something to that, because it's also a key ingredient for you.
Yeah. I think it's also about the creativity, like the creative side. Because I know when I was incredible, we're just going to use the music analogy. I was very classically trained. Like I studied in Vienna and I did orchestra in college and, like hardcore stuff. Right? And then, after some time away from academia, I started playing with the worship team at my church, and like they didn't have sheet music, they didn't have all the stuff I was used to, and so I had to like connect to something within me to just like make up, every time I played it, it was different, and it was so much fun. And so it's finding that like ebb and flow of just like being connected to something, like it's within you but also outside of you in some way, like being able to go in that way. So it can be meditation, it can be yoga, it can be music, it can be a walk, but
it can be raking the leaves, it can be doing the gardening, it can be cooking. It could even be driving, but again, that's mindlessness versus the mindfulness and then the intentionality around it. And sometimes partnership is good, but oftentimes it's not, because you have this neocortex inhibition that's required, because you really have to go in, and that radical honesty is tricky. Unless you've got a girlfriend who's going through the same thing, and you guys can both like, punch it out, ha! Ha! or whatever, whatever it is. And even my daughter knows now. She'll be like, Mom, you're a little grumpy, so why don't you go exercise? I'm like, okay. She knows.
Yeah. That's hilarious. No, I found when I was going through a divorce, sword fighting was like really cathartic for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Just something about, beating up an animated character on the TV was really helpful. So.
I swam. During my divorce, I swam. It seemed to be a great medium to, this is going to sound kind of heavy, but like it was almost as if the tears didn't, it's like the tears were one with it. And it was just like so many tears, it was just so hard to build a family and a life and then have it end. But that was, over a decade ago now, and all things happen for a reason.
They do, yeah. Yeah, they really do.
And you talked about crashing and burning, just to revisit that from earlier in the conversation, because that's actually what happens if we don't deal with this stuff. We go into depression. We go into major imbalances. Unfortunately, there is no solution for depression. The medication helps, but that's not the solution. There's really no solutions for hormones. There's no one size fits all. When you have a thyroid disorder, hypo or hyper, or any other endocrine imbalance, which we find most women are suffering from that after age 50 or so, 45, 50, I mean, so many women I know are dealing with this, myself included. I tend to run hypo, and so I've got, it's so tricky. We've got to stay on top of it for ourselves.
We do.
Make ourselves a priority. So if you find yourself, those of you who are listening, putting yourself as like number 3 or 4 on your list of priorities after work and family and relationship, it's only a matter of time before life says, okay, you're gonna, it's going to give you some kind of injury. Unfortunately, usually that's what happens, or some kind of crisis, financial, relationship, or health. Those are usually the 3 areas for us to kind of tune back in and get realigned to our center. And if we can be doing that on a daily basis, we're really going to be helping to prevent some of these things that may be inevitable. And the whole field of psychoneuroimmunology is proving what we're saying in this conversation about how emotions are impacting health, cancer in particular, depression, of course, anxiety, which is at an all-time high, suicide. I mean, it's just, we need this. We need outlets.
Yeah. Well, and especially, this last year, where at the time we're recording this, it's like a year from when the world shut down, basically. But the impact on mental health, like, I think we're just starting to really understand and see the effects of that, because it's been really challenging for a lot of people. But, the solution also lies within us. It's tapping into that, wherever we're going to get our strength from, whether it's whatever you want to call it, if it's God, if it's, some sort of higher something that we connect to, we have to be able to tap into that in order to heal and move forward. And I was going to say, with, putting ourselves lower on our list, because I think so many of us do this as women, if you really stop and look at why we do that, like, yes, we want to nurture and all that, but I often find it's because we have a self-worth conversation where we don't think we're worthwhile or worthy of the time or whatever it is. And so we absolutely have to start, there and transform that. And you look like you have things to add to that, so please go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're so right. It is usually inside of, I'll say something strong, maybe too strong, like a self-sabotage cycle. Because, like Marianne Williamson says, our greatest fear is not that we're going to fail, but is our greatness. And it is just a generation ago that our parents were, our mothers, I should say, were, secretaries and housewives, and that was what was expected of them. And it's changed, but just recently. It's still very new. And so for women to prioritize themselves, is disrupting the family unit. I mean, it is in terms of us being in the workforce and so on and so forth. But at the same time, if we don't tap in and tune into our wisdom, then we can't really be a gift to our families and our relationships and our work.
Right.
And the reason why I'm suggesting that we get this radical honesty and we move it somehow is so we can get to that. It's not like you can just flip a switch. At least my experience has shown me it's not like you can just flip a switch. You've got to actually release some of the distortion. And I use that word intentionally, like, when you have a radio station, or we used to have a radio station, and you kind of weren't quite yet. Only older folks will understand this.
Most of us are like in their 40s and 50s, so, we know what a radio is, right?
But right before you get to the station, there's all this static, and that's kind of the same thing that's going on. It's like, until we can get to that wisdom, that center, what you said. Yeah. We have to shift it out. The self-worth conversation is real, and we're all in it, and we may have inherited it from our foremothers. Who knows? Is it important to understand where it comes from? Maybe it was Susie in the playground who stole our shovel in the sand pit. Who knows? It's there. Yeah. And it's time now for us to unapologetically step into our power, but from a place of love. Not that place of aggression or anger or righteousness, right? But a place of, love, tenderness, and kindness, which to me is what embodies the female energy.
Yes, absolutely. Whereas all that other stuff, I would argue, is male. So.
Yeah, and we're required to have a lot of male energy these days to manage all the things we have to manage. And part of that removing the distortion, shaking it off, moving it out, is getting to that kind, tender, loving place. Because we have to keep that balance. I mean, sometimes we need that male energy to push through. the day, because we've got to get stuff done.
Right.
I mean, it's like no one else is going to do it. I mean, laundry, dishes, cooking, cleaning, it's like the bills got to get paid. I mean, we do everything. We hold it all together. And it's great, but, it has its price, and it's time. Mm-hmm. It's our time, actually. And I see a lot of power getting taken, but not always from a loving, kind place. And so I really want to emphasize that.
Yeah.
To ourselves first and foremost, and then it will reverberate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've shared at times, and I think you and I are in the same wavelength. Like, I love that Marianne Williamson quote. I think it comes up on like every other episode that I do, whether an interview or like me just talking about it. It always gives me chills. But, I'm really all about, like, as women, I think a lot of our power, like, we're getting into feminism here, but a lot of our power was somewhat taken away over just how, how society was created in a patriarch and all of this stuff. I had another interview where we talked about that, but we have to, like, it's the time to reclaim it. And I'm all about, women stepping into our power in a feminine way. It's not like we're necessarily competing with men or any of that, but like just really waking up to who we actually are, because we are powerful beings and we are capable of doing a lot more than we probably give ourselves credit for. But all of it starts inside in what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, right. So. It's right here. And I've learned so much about nutrition over the years. And nutrition's important. Eating whole foods, chemical-free, high plant diet is key. That is important. Just to get the clarity in your mind, so you're not in the addiction loop of flour, sugar, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine. That's a key element. And if anyone who's listening is interested in doing a little reset, there is a 7-day lifestyle plan on my website that you can download and get yourself back on track. But there's also a lifestyle plan, right? Because it's not only about food. Exercise is important, right? Whatever that looks like for you. Hopefully it'll be fun and you can find your play. For me, dancing, I love to dance. That's play. Not everyone's into that, So for some people it's fencing, whatever it is, find it, And you've got to have the exercise piece. You got to have the nutrition piece. So if you're in a kind of sugar phase, you might want to consider, phasing that out. Springtime, summertime, great time to really lighten up and get back to the abundance of fruits and vegetables available that give you energy, not take energy away from you. And same thing with your mindset, like thinking thoughts, clearing yourself so you can think thoughts that are going to give you energy instead of take your energy away from you. And it's like everything we do in our life, it's like a practice. And that becomes our medicine. So if we're practicing cycles of sabotage, practicing cycles of putting myself last, practicing cycles of unhealthy choices, mentally, physically, emotionally, and also like in our diets, it will result in a certain way, right? It's like, not bad or good, but there are consequences to making different choices.
Yeah.
And so we have to be, clear about what we want. I mean, I don't know about you, but I want health and happiness and joy and freedom. And I think that's what our birthright is. I think that's what we were born to have.
Yeah. We were born to live. And I think so many of us are stuck in, living a half or mediocre existence and don't realize how much of it is actually within our power to take control of again.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we're doing what we're doing, because we can see it. Sometimes when I go to the grocery store, I see people who are really struggling with pain. They're having a hard time walking, and they don't realize that what's in their cart might be causing it. They have some, maybe diet soda or, lots of bread and meat and milk and ice cream, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could share it with them, but I don't.
Yeah.
Because they probably would get angry at me, so I don't say anything.
You brought me back to, so I'm a chiropractor is my original hat, and in school it was everyone was still eating bad when we started. Not me, I'd already been on my journey, but then it's like we're all judging each other's carts at Whole Foods to see like who can be the most healthy. But what people don't know is like I'm judging you when I see you in the grocery store, not in a bad way, just why we do what we do is to help educate and share with the world that
I think it started
there's a lot that
I got curious.
Yeah.
like what foods were making which bodies. And so I actually it was more of a curiosity thing, like, oh, okay, so these foods might cause that. Like I remember finding women who had this like unusually large fatty area here, like their upper arms were so fat, and I was like, why does that happen? And then I started to see patterns, and I don't know if this is true, but I started to notice that there were women who were buying like 3 or 4 of those whipped cream, those low-fat whipped cream things. I think it's only like 1 point on Weight Watchers. I forget what it's called. It's really delicious, but it's like, I don't know, it must have some terrible chemicals in it. I don't know.
But, well, and anything low-fat is hurting you, it's helping you. So.
But
there's so much that's backwards.
Yeah, so I drew a correlation. So I actually find it really interesting. Even at gyms, like, oh, okay, those exercise creates these bodies, and these foods create those bodies, and so for me, it's been a study. And I spent 10 years at something. You were in Europe too. I spent 10 years in Switzerland, and I was studying food as medicine in Greece and in Switzerland and France and Germany. I learned to speak fluent French and German because I really wanted to sit with the grandmothers, and I wanted to know what were in their teas that they were giving to their grandkids with their hurt bellies, and there were so many common threads in every culture on how they were healing with nature, and it really blew my mind. And it's actually quite simple, just getting back to the cycles of nature.
Yeah.
Rising early, going to bed at a reasonable hour, eating foods in season, getting outside in fresh air and sunshine, moving your body. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so simple, and yet we've made it so complicated just with the digital age and technology and like all of this stuff. And I think, for a lot of people, you may be listening to this and be like, but that sounds too simple. But like, it actually is that simple. Like, I know I have these thoughts of like, well, is it really that easy? Like, yeah, actually it is, that's all there is to it. Like,
yeah. But I think it's like, I want this, I deserve that. And that's more fun and entertaining, right? So for me, it's that conversation, and then trusting the simplicity of it enough to give it a try and see what it has to offer. And like I've been trying to fast from my phone, like putting it down and not even looking at it, which is hard. It's hard for me.
It is.
And like I love some of these vegan prepackaged products, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave those for a few weeks, and I feel so different. It's about, allowing yourself the things that you love and loving yourself enough to trust it's a simple way of living and seeing what it has to offer you. Because at the end of the day, it's all about energy. What energy am I cultivating? And it is that simple. Following nature's law is the key to health and longevity.
Yeah. And, it's following it in the way that your body needs to. Because I think so many, I love the health and wellness industry, and I hate it at the same time because it's, everyone tries to, prepackage you into, this one thing is what you're supposed to be doing. And it just drives me nuts. It's really about, a lot of what we're talking about is experimenting. Figure out what works for your body and what doesn't work for your body, and how what makes you feel good and what doesn't make you feel good, and keep the things that work.
It's true, and it's constantly changing. I mean, as I'm getting older now, it's different, and I've tried every diet imaginable. So I had to, in order to find out what works for me. And it keeps changing, and I keep fine tuning it. And one thing I will say is herbs. Herbs for me have become more important than anything, like dill and parsley and cilantro, and even more, special herbs like ashwagandha and rhodiola and tulsi and things like that, like red clover and dandelion, like these kind of potent foods that have so much concentrated phytonutrients and health benefits. They're really taking precedent in on my plate these days, and I'm finding I need less. I need a lot less than I think I do.
That's really funny. I've actually taken to, because I do a lot with essential oils and supplements and whatnot, and lately I've been feeling like my body's just not feeling great on this. So I've actually taken to, it's called quantum reflex something or other, but basically you make the O-rings, and those listening.
I do like this though.
Yeah.
I do this one.
You do that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. But you put like your index finger and thumb together, and you just ask, like, does my body need this? Yes or no? And you'll hold strong, and it actually works. And so I've been like, whatever supplements I take for the day, whatever essential oils I use, like I ask first, and I've been feeling way better. My energy's been good, and I'm like, cool. So, trust your body. It knows some stuff, and it will tell you if you tune into it to ask it.
Totally. Thanks for the reminder. I haven't been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like the more I learn, the more I have to unlearn, because it's not the intellect that's going to ever get me to where I really need to go. That's not really where the rich, deep, profound wisdom lies in all of us women. Women
exactly
have a very, 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 very special. We're very special. This wisdom that we hold is so special. So we have to really just get soft and allow it to emerge. And it is a bit of work, I believe, to let the water flow, the energy flow, the blood flow, the breath flow. Mm-hmm. And I speak about this thing called emotional stamina a lot, because we need it. We need to develop agility around navigating our emotions, because they come just like hunger is going to come, and emotion is going to come: anger, frustration, happiness, joy, sadness, all of them. And it's like we got to like not hook in, and be able to to be able to move through, to be able to really be driven by this wisdom and this openness, which is really, I think, innate in all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can talk forever, so we'll kind of wrap up on this thought. But I look back to, like, part of my story is I went through a very toxic marriage. My ex-husband was an alcoholic, and just the amount of stress, like when you talk about emotional, I forgot exactly what word you used, but our ability to cope and deal with emotions, like I wasn't. And so my tolerance level for being able to expand myself in any way emotionally was like impossible. I'd try to go run, and I'd make it like 5 feet and just crash, because I was burnt out basically, and not dealing with processing and not like developing that as a muscle, like being able to deal with and process our emotions. And I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure there are plenty of listeners out there. So this is my 2 cents, like, start cultivating these tools that we're talking about, and, figure out, and it's still a work in progress for me. Like, I was actually thinking as we were talking, yesterday I was feeling like this, just anxious. I had this pressure in my chest, like my stomach was upset, and I just finally stopped, and I was like, okay, what is going on? And I didn't quite identify exactly what it was, but I just had this overwhelming like feeling of anxiety. So I stopped working, and I stopped, just kind of took some time and did some breathing and did some yoga, and I finally calmed down. But it's like being able to tune into ourselves in that way is really important.
It's really important that you said that too, Alex, because not knowing is okay. But honoring yourself in that moment, not trying to push through, I think is brilliant. That's really important that you said that, because oftentimes not knowing is okay. I mean, always not knowing is okay, but just being able to feel it and be with it, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
Well, Helene, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people connect with you?
Jennifer Helene, Jennifer-Helene, HELENE.com. And then you'll be prompted, if you want the 7-day for free, you can enter your name and email, and we can send it on over to you. It's basically a guide for 7 days, and it'll help you reset your systems. Now, since I'm all about joy, there are some delicious recipes in there that I hope you'll try.
Good.
Maybe some innovative ideas on how to make some extremely healthy foods. I build programs, for lifestyle change, and there are thousands of students in over 60 countries, and so I'm not guessing at this point. Like, I know what works. And it's not fancy and it's not expensive, but it does take some clarity and, I don't want to say willpower, but, clarity and commitment and love,
Yeah.
to yourself.
For yourself first, and then the world.
Yeah.
So,
and you can contact me there as well. If you don't want the 7-day lifestyle plan, totally fine. You can just email me, but feel free to reach out.
Perfect. I'll put all that in the show notes, but thank you so much for, your time and conversation. I really enjoyed this, and I'm sure our listeners will as well. So
thank you.